Let's begin. Hi, and welcome back to Plastic Models by a Regular Dude and part 2 of the Revell 1/48 scale F-15C Eagle. In part 1, I did an intro going over what my plan was for the kit and the contents of the box and the extra stuff in the form of decals that I would be using. So just as a quick recap, I'll briefly go over what my plan is for this kit and how I'm going to deal with this video series. So my plan is to do the California Air National Guard version of this aircraft, which is 194th Fighter Squadron, Fresno Air National Guard Base, California Air National Guard, 2014. So this is the profile of it right here. I will be using these decals, which are printed by Cartograph, Bullseye, Model Aviation. And apparently, I didn't notice this before, these are sold exclusively through Sprue Brothers, which is where my son got them whenever he was going to do this particular kit. So as for aftermarket, there will be none, except for the decals. So it's basically going to be built out of the box. It's going to be wheels down, but canopy open with the pilot in it. You know, like he just got in it or something. So that is the plan. As for the video series itself, it's going to be an in-depth, step-by-step build of and painting of this aircraft. So what I do in a full video series, full build video series, is I will, each video at the beginning, I will demonstrate how I cut the parts off of the sprue, what I do to clean them up, stuff like that. Then as the video progresses, I will do that stuff off camera and just deal specifically with the actual parts and the way they fit onto the aircraft in this case. You know, just how I handle the build and the painting involved. So by doing that, it won't last as long. You won't see me cutting and sanding a bunch of stuff over and over and over again. So hopefully I can keep this series, each video of the series, to a manageable level to where they're not so bleeding long. So with that, I'll stop blabbing and we'll get to work. All right, so the first thing I need to do is I need to start on the cockpit parts. So the first thing we've got here is I need to cut off parts 36, 37, and 38. So because these sprues are not lettered as well as numbered like most sprues, it's going to take me a little bit longer to find the parts. So let me find those parts, get them out, get them ready, and then I'll cut them off, sand them, and all that stuff. Well, now that didn't take long. So we have part number 38, which is the rear canopy brace. And apparently, at this point, I need to choose if I'm going to have the canopy open or closed. So I need to see how that interacts with the canopy. Okay, apparently you have to cut part of this off in order to have the canopy closed. So it's going to be open, so I'm not going to have to do that. So here is part 38 here. Using my handy Tamiya cutter, I'm going to cut this off there and there. And then I need parts 37 and 36. Now this one, the part number is actually molded onto the part, which used to be a common practice back in the elder days. But anyway, so I'm going to cut it just a little bit away from the part like this. And then part 37, like that. Then I'm going to move this out of the way so you'll be able to see what's going on a little bit better. And I'll zoom in whenever it's necessary to show some really up close stuff when it's needed. I don't think it's really needed right now. But on parts like this, I'll cut it as close as possible with the cutter after I've removed it from the sprue. Less likelihood of damage that way. So then I'm going to check it out and see if anything needs to be sanded. There's a little bit of flash going on here. Not much. So I'm going to use my 600 grit sander and gently sand that smooth. I'll go ahead and zoom in so it'll be a little more visible. Sand where the, I'm going to use my 400 for this, where the sprue gate was. Sand that flat like that. The sides look pretty good. And then sand this part here. So I'll make sure this is cut off. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now for stuff like this, for round stuff, I don't really like to sand it so much as scrape it. So where the seam is, I'll just gently scrape it. Not much. I don't want to make it flat. But that gets the majority of it off. Then I can take a sanding stick. In this case, let me find it. 240. It's 320 here. One thing that's kind of weird about some sanders is we jump from 320 up to 1200. Seems excessive, but it's all right. Make sure that's smooth. Now there's a little bit of a mold seam line right here. I'm going to scrape that flat with my knife. It's easier than trying to sand it. Okay, now this is this faces up, so I really want to make sure that that looks good. So I'm going to scrape that flat there. I could sand it, but this way there's less likelihood that I'm going to make it not flat. Okay, so I'm going to get this one here. And again, I'm only going to demonstrate this stuff on the first few parts so as not to make the video too long, but it's pretty much the same regardless of the part. There's a little bit of detail there, it looks like. I don't want to knock that off. At least it looks like detail. Gotta be careful. So that looks pretty good. So this part here, I'm not sure how important it is that that is flat, perfectly flat. So I need to, I don't think it is, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to scrape that off smooth. Smoother, I should say. I'm not going to smooth it all the way out because I'd have to use some sanding for that. But I'll determine later if that needs to be flatter than that. Then I'll cut this little bit of sprue gate off here. And this part here. Alright, and then that looks pretty good. Right, now we're ready to glue some stuff in. So, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get these sub-assemblies put together of the cockpit, and then I'll be doing the painting on it. So this part goes right here. It's kind of a half moon shaped circle, and it's a very tight fit, so I'm going to use my tweezers to push it. Whoops. Push it all the way down. Make sure it is vertical. And then I'm going to apply my cement, which is, in this case, to me, extra thin. Apply it here like this. And a little bit down there like that. And this part here is going to go here. I think for that I'm going to use my thicker cement for no other reason than to just demonstrate that you can use various types of cement depending on the project or depending on the application. You know what, actually first, before that, I need to make sure this is flat. It's not. This part right here is making this, it's got like a little hump because of the mold seam line. So I'm going to scrape that smooth and then test fit it. It should be, yeah, it's a little better. Now this part, yeah, this part right here is supposed to be here. So I need to, it's got a little bit of flash on it. And down inside the cockpit, most likely wouldn't be seen, but it doesn't hurt to be safe. Alright, so get my Tamiya cement, whoops. Like that. And like that. And just make sure that it is perpendicular this way. That looks pretty good. All right, so there's that. So that takes care of the first section of step 1. So next I need to cut off parts 41, 42, 43, and 44. So those are molded right on the bottom of the tub there. So we got that, that, that. So we got 41, 42, which is the seat. Now this is one crazy thing about the way they used to do this. It's on 2 different sprues. You got 42, 43, and 44 are on one sprue. 41's on a completely other sprue. So I don't know how they did their numbering back in the day, but it's just kind of weird. So we got that. Let's see, 43 and 44. Okay, while I'm working on this, I need to also consider the pilot, because I'm not sure if I'd be able to fit him in after the fact, but might be able to. So what I need to do though is I need to get this seat cleaned up first. Same thing, just cut that off. Then we got to cut this off here, sprue gate, and looks good. Then I need to get rid of this rough stuff here. Now this stuff, if you don't get it perfect, it's not that big a deal, because that is going to be completely invisible. So otherwise that all looks pretty good. So that's cleaned up. Then the same thing here as I did like on the other part. Cut that off. Sand that edge smooth. No additional flash anywhere. There is a sprue gate there. Okay, now there are a couple of ejector pin marks here, so those need to be dealt with. So I can either just sand the tarnation out of them, or I can fill them in and then sand them. And I think that is what I'm going to do. And to do that, I am going to use some handy dandy sprue goo. What is sprue goo? If you have never heard of it, I don't know where you've been. Just kidding. It's basically residual amount of, to me, extra thin in the bottom of the bottle. Drop a bunch of cut up sprue bits in there, and you basically make a putty that is melted sprue. Dissolved sprue, not melted. And then that way, when it dries and you sand it, it's a lot more like the actual surrounding material, so it's a little bit easier to work with. So now I'm going to have to let that cure up for a bit. So in the meantime, I'll work on the instrument panel. See if there's any, no flash on there. It's a little bit of remaining sprue gate here. Sand that. It's kind of rough on top here. Okay, so that's good. Control stick, same thing. So what I want to really make sure is the top of the control stick is smooth, because that's the part you're going to see. Then scrape this mold seam line off there. And let's do a quick test fit here. Okay, the way this works is this part goes here like that. And that's a pretty good fit too. Pretty positive as far as, you know, forward and back. So I think what I'm going to need to do though is I think I'm going to have to paint these parts separately, just because I need to be able to take care of the instrument panel controls and make sure that that is painted and ready to roll. Alright, real quick, like, since I've got all these parts laying out here drying and stuff like that, tip of the day. What I like to do, so I'm not having to flip back and forth all the time, and some people might have a good enough memory or learn it soon enough, but I like to make a copy and I stick it on the back of my workstation here, and that way at a quick glance I can look and see what letter is what color. So tip of the day, that's free of charge. All right, so the next part I needed was 35, which is here. Cut it off and clean it up just like I did the other parts, and it fits right here. This part right here butts up against that right there, so it fits right in there like that. So for this, I'm going to use this here thicker glue, cement I should say. Like that. Put that in place like that. Tighten the lid on my glue, cement, whatever. And that is ready to go. All right, so set that aside. So that takes care of this part here, because I'm not going to, well, let's see if I could glue this on here. Actually, I guess I could. That might, that'd make it kind of hard to paint on the inside there. So I'm not going to glue this in place yet. So I'll set that aside. So that pretty much, with the exception of gluing this onto this, takes care of that part. But I just want to keep it as easy as possible, so I'm not going to do that. I think I can glue the seat in place, because the pilot will fit in after the fact like that. No, I'm going to wait. It'll make it easier to paint that stuff. That's right. So the next thing I need to do is, the next thing it calls out for is the landing gear, but I'm not going to do that yet because I want to get all this stuff painted, and I want to save as much time as possible in painting. So what I'll do is I'll cut these parts off here and get the parts glued in place for that. Then I can prime and paint all of this cockpit area at once. So let me go ahead and cut off part number 5 and 6 and 2 parts number 24. One thing I want to do before I glue this stuff together, even before I paint it and everything else, is I want to make sure that everything fits together well, which it does. It all fits really flat except for right there. That one's got a little bit of weirdness going on. So I want to make sure that is sanded smooth. There's no rough spots. It's almost like borderline flash. Oh, that much better. Okay, so that all fits together good. You know what? So while I have this like this, I should fit this and see. Okay, here's a quick test fit, and it's not bad. Got some gaps and stuff around here, but that can be pressed down into place. So yeah, that's not bad. I've definitely seen worse. But there is some flash and stuff like that that needs to be cleaned up on these fuselage parts here, like right here, a little bit right there. No, I think that's actually, no, that's supposed to be curved, so that's not flash there. So I just need to give this a swipe of the sanding stick. And once I get it glued together, I can clean it up further. Okay, so with those parts cut off, all I have to do now is prime and paint this stuff. I also need those two parts number 24, which I almost forgot. So got the first one in position, and I have to say that I really kind of like the way they decided to make these parts, because I just have to believe that if it were another brand of aircraft, something more modern, that these would just be just that part you can see right there, and you'd have to glue it on there and hope for the best that it didn't break off and get lost or some such. This, it fits through this hole like this, and you've got this huge piece right here that holds it in place. And I don't know, I just like it. Looks like it'd be a little bit stronger to me. It's easy to glue in place. Just put a little bit of cement there and there. It just seems like a better way to do it. Like that. Kind of like that. Sweet. All right, so those are done. So now all I have to do, I'm gonna kind of let that dry a little bit. I'm gonna mix up some primer, and I will prime these parts here. All right, for the first part of what you call priming, I'm going to be using Mr. Finishing Surf 1500 Black. And what I've done is I've mixed up a little small bottle of it here, 50% 1500 and 50% Mr. Color Leveling Thinner. Now I'm not going to show the airbrushing part of this stuff because it's very boring. It's just I'm going to use my airbrush, which in this case, since it's smaller stuff, whoops, I'll be using my Iwata HP M2 single action. It's got a, I think it's a 3.5 nozzle needle combo on it. If not, it's 3, I don't know, something like that. But anyway, I'm going to shoot this stuff with black, and then we'll come back. Okay, so with the what you call primer cured, I am going to use, but only for the interior. I've got other colors coming for the exterior, but I want to get this part done while I'm waiting for the other colors. So I'm going to use Tamiya F-15C, which is pretty close to the color I need for the interior. And since it is the interior, it's not as big a deal, in my opinion. So that way I can get this stuff sprayed, and I can get the details painted. So let's see. So I'm going to tape off this here, and I'm also going to tape this top part here because I was looking at some photos, and this top thing, oh man, you know what? I just realized something, folks, and you're probably laughing maniacally. I did not take care of those ejector pin marks, so I need to sand those. So the way I'm going to do that, first I'm going to use my knife to trim most of it. The high parts. Now I use a sanding stick to sand it down. So let's get the, I think I'll use the 400. And I'm just going to sand see, that is sanding really nicely using that sprue goo. Stuff is magical. See, perfectly smooth. Those are sanded off, and I'm not going to worry about taping that part off because I'm going to have to repaint it, and I'll just do it by brush. But anyway, I am going to tape that off and that off. And then this stuff here, this all needs to be gray. There's a few black parts, but I can paint those with a regular paintbrush. So I'm going to mix up my gray, my XF66, and then spray it. All right, with that all sprayed, now I can start doing some detail painting. So first thing I'm going to do is this part here is supposed to be silver, so I'm going to do that. And to paint that silver, I'm going to use Vallejo acrylic metal color airbrush colors. I know it says airbrush, but they brush paint very well. So I couldn't find any photos of the inside of this, so I'm going to take some creative liberties here and assume that just the rod portion of this is silver and the mounts and stuff like that are gray. I mean, that could be totally wrong, but it'll at least break up the monotony. Hopefully I'm not getting my noggin in the way. Especially since I'm busting out my Opti visor. Okay, if I get my head in the way, sorry folks. That looks pretty good. So that'll work. So that's the only thing that's in here that's silver. At least it's marked silver. So we got that. I need to paint some stuff black. So I need to paint the grip portion of the control stick. That has to be painted black. Then, as I mentioned earlier, I need to paint this flat piece here black. And then I need to paint this little area right here black. So for that, I'm going to use this third generation AK modeling color, acrylic modeling colors, rubber black. It's not a true black, but I rarely like to use just a completely true black. So what I'm going to do is put a little bit of that in here, like thisly. A little bit of my distilled water there. No, you don't have to use distilled water, I just like to. Alright, so I think for that though, I'm going to use a bigger brush. And the brushes I'm using for this, to me, a modeling brush. And I really like these things. I discovered them last year sometime when I was on a trip to Vegas. I discovered them in, I think it's called Hobby One Japan. It's a pretty small shop, but it's really nice. It's got some cool stuff in there. Again, I'm not going to be doing this repeatedly on camera just for sake of time, but I am going to just demonstrate what I'm doing here. Just thin it out to the consistency I want, and then come in and paint it up. Oops, I haven't been off frame. Alright, so I'm going to paint up the rest of the stuff and then come back. Alright, so I'm doing some washes here. I've been experimenting a little bit. And I've got this one done here. And what I've done is I've made a concoction of water, Future, and some of the rubber black, and made myself a wash. Part of the reason I'm doing it this way for this is because Tamiya paints are so flat that most washes, at least in my hands, they just bloom into the plastic. Instead of accumulating into the detail, it just kind of diffuses into the flat surface. And I didn't really want to spray a gloss inside. I figured with the limitations of what you can actually see inside of the cockpit, I figured this would work. It's darkening up the color a little bit, but that's okay because, you know, it is in a shaded, shadowed area. Is my reasoning sound? Well, you be the judge, but that's what I'm doing. I'm sticking with it. But this stuff works pretty good. I think this is what people often refer to as a magic wash. I'm not sure, but it does work really good. And when it dries, it's not really as glossy as as it first appears. So it's pretty shiny looking right now, but it does flatten out a little bit, because future on something like this, especially on a flat surface, it's not going to be real shiny or anything. Okay, so there's that. So that looks a little bit better. Again, it's going to be in a closed up cockpit, so I'm not real concerned about it. This side's already been done here. Hopefully you can see the effect I got. It does pop pretty well. I'm not going to do a lot of detail painting on the inside of this, because of the way this cockpit is, it would be wasted effort, and I'm just not going to do it. Call me lazy. But there's that. So now the next thing I need to do is I need to do a little bit of dry brushing on the instrument panels, just to make all the small details kind of pop a bit. So let me clean up my brush here and get all my stuff ready, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so I'm using some Vallejo Model Color Silver. Got some on the brush, wipe most of it off, and then I'm just lightly hitting the highlights, the buttons and knobs and all that stuff. It's gonna be perfect. Nope, because I am totally out of practice with the old dry brush stuff. However, it will help a little bit. Now, if I was really wanting to get all crazy with this cockpit, I would just get an aftermarket instrument panel set, but I'm trying to keep this out of the box as much as possible. Okay, hopefully you can see that. It's really kind of hard to see in this light, and I go both directions. So we got that, so let's get some more paint, rub almost all of it off. I mean, rub it till you just can't even see it on the paper towel anymore, because there will be some left. And, oh, yep, see, that was almost too much. Like that. So I'm going to continue working on this, and then come back we'll start assembling all this mess. Okay, sorry, fast forward. I've got it all put together, but there's really not a lot to talk about, because this part glued on there, the instrument panel, everything was fine. I did paint the figure and installed him at the same time. However, I will not be talking about that much, because that is a complete other can of worms. But I think I may have a video on my future on that, because I have discovered a method to paint figures to a degree that I'm somewhat satisfied, and they'll work for my purposes. But anyway, so that pretty much takes care of up to the third portion of step one. All right, the next thing I need to do is cut this landing gear part off. Now, I don't know if I'm actually going to be gluing this in just yet. I may glue that in later, but I need to make sure that that it's possible to glue it in later. So I need to cut it off and give it a test fit. So let me cut that off and get it ready, and we'll take a look at it. All right, and looking at test fitting this into the wheel well, it would not work after gluing together the fuselage halves. So I'm going to have to do this now, but what I'll do is I'll just get it together and then I'll paint it and everything, and then I'll just tape it off. And that way I won't have to worry about messing it up when I'm painting the aircraft. So let me get my paints ready and get this thing painted up, and then we can move on. All right, so I got the landing gear painted. So now I want to scrape some of this paint off here so it'll have good plastic to bare plastic contact for gluing it in place. I'm just crazy like that. And then for this side I'm going to use super glue. So basically this slides right into, there's like a channel right there. Slides right in like that. That part rests on there. No big thing. So I am going to flatten this out a little bit. Like that. Alright. So now let me get my two glues out. So I'm going to use this thicker glue. Go ahead and get this open. So put some super glue there, and then this glue there, and glue it in place like that. Okay, so now all I gotta do is let it dry a little bit. Okay, so let's recap real quick. Step one, got all of the cockpit and everything assembled, including the pilot and the landing gear. So that is done. Then these two sections here, everything's painted, ready to go, and these parts glued in. So that basically ends step one. So with that, I think I'm going to end this video here so it doesn't get overly long. And when we come back next time, we'll start on step two, which is assembling these two fuselage halves with the cockpit. And then we begin working on some of the main fuselage parts there. So that is it for part two of the Revell 1/48 scale F-15C Eagle. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked it, if you haven't subscribed yet, maybe hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button if you liked it. Leave some comments in the comment section down below. If you have any hints, tips, questions, concerns, especially if you have any experience with this kit, and let me know what you think. So, until next time, thanks for watching Plastic Models by a Regular Dude, and I will see you all later.